Welcome to the Commercial Real Estate Podcast, powered by First National. I am Adam Pawadic, sitting here with Aaron Cameron at the Toronto Real Estate Forum. Everybody is in at lunch right now, so we're lucky to have a quiet spell in which to record, unlike our previous recordings of the day. This is, of course, also part of our speaker video series, sponsored by Dow Vukovic, ML Emporio Properties Limited, and Turner and Townsend.
This is always a weird time during the forum because it is eerily quiet right now. We're usually trying to combat with a whole bunch of noise and 1,000 people walking around. So let's take advantage of this while we can.
Just luxuriate in the silence for a minute. Yeah. Our guest over the lunch hour here is Glenn Way, president of GWL Realty Advisors. Welcome, Glenn.
Great to be here. Appreciate you guys inviting me.
So we always like to kind of just start with the career history. So why don't you just explain kind of how you ended up in real estate, how you ended up at GWL, and what that story looks like?
Yeah, sure. So when I went to university, it was the University of Guelph. The first year that I went there, I was taking a commerce program, and they offered a real estate major. I'd never seen that before, and I was intrigued by it. And so I went into the real estate major, and there was 13 of us in that class. And I think what was unique about that is when I started looking for summer work, I would send resumes out to all kinds of organizations in Toronto, and I ended up getting a great summer job at a company called Enterprise Property Group, and there were two gentlemen, brokers, that had just joined as partners to run a leasing division, and they were intrigued by the fact I was studying real estate and had never heard of that. So that was really a fortunate opportunity for me, and the reason it was so fortunate is because I got to meet a few people that were in the business. So I spent a couple summers doing that, and I graduated from school. I sent a resume to an article that was it was in the Globe and Mail, looking for an analyst on a commercial debt desk. And
sent the letter, not email, I'm assuming.
That's right. Yeah, exactly. Hard copy.
Not to age you or anything.
And in any event, I got hired. There was apparently 200 applications. They hired two people, and I credit being hired to the fact that I had a little bit of experience, but two, I had two people known in the industry that had vouched for me, if you will. So I spent a little bit of time working at that group. I managed to get a pretty good fundamental understanding of value and valuation. And then probably more importantly, I actually did a couple deals. So I was able to actually place some debt on a couple of properties. And my phone rings one day. I'd only been there for 9 months. My phone rings one day. It's a gentleman by the name of John Peets. He worked at Cadillac Fairview. He was leasing the Toronto Dominion Center. He said, "Glenn, I just had lunch with Tim Lowe." And Tim was a guy that I had worked with as a summer student. And he said, "Glenn, Tim said that I should meet you. I'm looking to hire someone." So John and I have a handful of conversations, and next thing you know, I'm offered an opportunity to be a junior leasing person at Cadillac Fairview's Toronto Dominion Center, downtown Toronto, and I jumped at that. It was an incredible opportunity.
What year was this, just for context?
That would have been 1996 when I started there. So,
okay, so near the end of the sort of big recession at the time.
Start of the next cycle, yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So, so I had a great opportunity working with Cadillac. It was a fun company. It was an exciting company. I got to do a lot of deals. I was kind of thrown into the deep end quick. The market had been soft and was just starting to gain a little bit of traction. And so I spent a number of years there getting to do a lot of deals, and had a fair amount of freedom. And, when you start a new role, you don't really know exactly what you're doing, and there's 20 people you're supposed to tour, and who's the broker, and what's their role, and who's the design, and you figure it out quick. You learn quick when you're when you're thrown in like that, and so that was a huge opportunity, and really a little bit of network as a young person. And now I got Cadillac on my resume, and it was through that where they had developed the Young Corporate Center in sort of Midtown Toronto, Hogs Hollow area. London Life was the 50% JV partner. And GWL Realty Advisors, Great West Life had bought London Life. So next thing you know, I'm presenting to these guys as partners. And it was through that they got to know a little bit about me. Next thing you know, there was a bit of dialogue with them, and GWL Realty said, "Hey, we'd love for you guys you to join us." And I'd been used to working downtown, sort of shiny towers, and they wanted me to go to Markham. Admittedly, I didn't know a whole lot about Markham, what was going on, but there was the tech thing was sort of starting up, and it looked like a company that was just on the cusp of some growth. So I joined them as a leasing person, doing again transactions, and from there. Every time there was an opportunity for me to do more, I took it. And so I'm leasing in Markham, and then they said, "Hey, could you maybe lease our Mississauga office as well?" So you pick up more asset classes, different market dynamics, and I was happy to do that. And shortly after that, they said, "This is going well. Why don't you get out of leasing, get into asset management? Why don't you go to Mississauga and run this office, lead it. And so there was an office of about 65 people there. I jumped at that because A, it was new, it was different, and B, there was a fair amount of leadership involved. So I was doing that for a stretch of time, and it went well. And then they said, hey, why don't you pull in Markham as well? So now it's kind of a suburban Toronto thing. So you're learning a lot the whole time. And then, they said, why don't you move back downtown Toronto and run leasing for everything? I thought, hey, great, I've been in the suburbs for a while, come back down. So I did that for a year, and then they're like, you know what, we'd love for you to run our GTA office downtown from an asset management perspective. And so you start to, I guess I started to earn some trust. Mm-hmm. And ultimately from there, it just kind of kept growing. And sometimes it might even feel like I was taking a bit of a step back, but whenever there was an opportunity for me to learn something new or learn a new market, I always took it. And, that kind of turned into Eastern Canada for commercial, and then that sort of turned into Canada for commercial, and then that turned into, hey, lead our residential platform as our COO, and I did that for a number of years, and then just now recently, I am where I am.
What's the moral of that story?
From my perspective,
say yes to everything.
Yeah.
Well,
Get comfortable. Be comfortable being uncomfortable, because I've been at this company for over 20 years. My scope has probably changed 10 times. And every time you do something new, it's new people. It's new. To me, you're earning trust, you're earning respect, you're having to work hard, and you just hope things go well, and you kind of follow your heart and do what you think is right, and hopefully others believe in you. And it's been a really good run.
There's a thirst for learning and education there too. It seems like it was just something not necessarily. I mean, I'm sure behind the curtain, or at least in the back of your head, there's always sort of career strategy and career objectives, but learning something new and getting exposed to something new is a sounds like, anyway, the way you described it was a big piece of that.
Definitely. For me personally, everybody's different. Boredom is not something that is exciting or intriguing to me. I remember one point where I thought, wow, the water's calm right now. It almost felt a little too calm, and then all of a sudden something clicked and there was a new opportunity. So I would say, always be prepared to do different things, and there's no perfect path from my perspective. It's not like I'm writing the path. It's a little more Plinko, and if there's opportunities, don't be afraid to grab them, and if you have a chance to learn, that's usually going to be a benefit to you.
It's a great visual. We're all just a bunch of Plinko chips pumping around.
It's pretty amazing that arguably the start of your career was the start of this cycle that's just ending now. One of the longest in history. So what you learned in 96, 97, 98 will finally become relevant again in 25, 26, 27. What would be, the big advice as we head to the next cycle for opportunities? And obviously very different than 1996, 97, 98, but there has to
It probably hasn't changed very much. You answer, but
yeah.
Well, from my vantage point, whenever there's pressures on the market, I mean, it does generate opportunity. There's going to be players within the market on both ends of the spectrum. Some right now are positioned beautifully. They're well capitalized, and they can pounce on weakness. You're going to have the other end of the spectrum where, maybe people got, used to really, really cheap money and hockey stick shaped rental curves, and, might be struggling right now. So there's always opportunity within a market, and from my vantage point right now, it has been challenging. A lot of people compare it to the 90s. In the 90s, early 90s, the theme I know within the industry was survive to 95. And so, you've heard a few people say survive to 2025 right now. It was interesting being at the forum this morning, seeing the mood of the audience. I'm sensing more optimism than not, and I think that's just part of the nature of people that are in the industry that we're in.
is that just ignorance?
Which side?
There's a wrong word. Yeah, that's maybe the wrong word, but is that just blissful hopelessness? I don't know how you frame it.
Yeah, I think it depends where you sit on it. I come on the investment side of things, and so from my vantage point, if you have a portfolio that's well diversified, if you're a group that is not highly levered and never really has been, you can have pretty sustainable revenue lines, and we have properties generating cash flow. And if you start looking at some of the asset classes, I'll look at industrial, for example, right now, fundamentals are still strong. Even if they were to weaken or degrade, and I look at the composition of our portfolio and I look at over the next 24 months and say, what's rolling over and what are the average contract rents in place across the country and how does that compare to market? Well, there's still plenty of upside, even if rents were to come down. So it's going to generate more cash flow. And you might have other asset classes where there's pressure on it, but when you net it all together, if you can have predictable, sustainable cash flow, that's kind of what we're after. And so now's the time, I think, there's opportunities people don't typically see. If you look back 2018, 19, and something good was for sale, there's a huge lineup on the bid side of things and not a lot for sale. And, the tables maybe turned a little bit where there could be product available and people can look to move up the quality curve and position themselves for the next run of the sun shining.
I want to talk about, we'll actually get into kind of your position right now in the market, but before we go there, we should probably just talk about where you are today in GWL Realty. So size, scope, asset classes,
sure.
just kind of run through that, and then we can talk about sort of the fundamentals.
Yeah, sure. So GWL Realty Advisors, we're a wholly owned subsidiary of Canada Life, which is underneath the Great West Life Co. family, which is a very, very large enterprise with tentacles that are broad. We have about $17 billion in Canada. We're at 250 properties across the country, so national platform, vertically integrated. We're very active developing right now in all the major markets, particularly in multifamily. We've crafted in 2018 a brand we call the Livermore, which is a very high quality, very highly amenitized, purpose-built multifamily product, which we continue to build out and have a pretty big pipeline in that regard. We're an office player as well across the country. Industrial is a big category for us. And we do have retail, not predominantly, all needs of life, grocery anchored, something that we'd love to grow, but it's not easy to do that at scale.
What about your staff? You seem like someone that I like these questions, and some people don't, but let's just talk quickly about the size of your teams, the growth of your teams, and I and just to hone in on the kind of what I think is an interesting questionnaire or line of questioning. Entering this sort of challenging marketplace, not nearly as busy as we used to be, a lot more uncertainty in the marketplace. How do you set a tone and a culture for your staff as the leader?
Yeah, so there's 750 people in our organization. They're reading the headlines that we're seeing every single day. And so to your point, I think it's, from my vantage point, we have to remind ourselves that this is a long game, that we sell assets, buy assets, and develop assets with frequency. And sometimes when people hear, we're going to dispose of something, it can be viewed as a negative or scary. But sometimes we're making a disposition because we're crystallizing a really good return, and we believe that we can redeploy that capital in a place that's going to perform better in an asset that has a better ability to compete in the future and over time. And so to me, it's really reminding people that ebbs and flows within the market, but commercial real estate is a long game, and we don't want to get too rattled by looking at what's 30 days in front of us, as opposed to thinking with a long-term mindset.
The allocation towards real estate as part of the larger enterprise, what's the strategy there in terms of holdings over the next 2 years, call it?
Yeah, I think, if I think throughout my career, the allocations to real estate have done nothing but grown, which has been a real positive for a lot of people. You're starting to see some folks that are maybe at the top of their allocation at the moment. But there has been a bit of a movement just to increase allocation in the alternative space, and you're seeing more organizations sort of branch out of the traditional assets and into alternative real estate holdings. So, from my vantage point, I think the allocations are likely to hold or maybe edge up a little bit. I don't see them backing up to the asset class.
Okay, but maybe within that umbrella, heavier on the alternative.
Oh, I see. Yeah. I think if you look at Canada and you look at the fundamentals, there's no question. Multifamily, the Century initiatives. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the Century initiative. So the objective and goal is 100 million people by the year 2100. That's a huge.
That's a lot of people.
It's a huge tailwind. And so, that's an opportunity to play. Everyone reads the headlines every day. Supply is something that's desperately needed. And so it's a category that we intend to continue to invest in. And if I look at what our organization has done over the course of the last 5 years, we haven't been selling down office. We've been investing in industrial and investing in multifamily. And that's really brought those allocations up as opposed to shrinking our office allocation.
Is that trend continuing?
I would say that that is continuing. Yes, that's if I look at the pipeline of opportunities that we have, we have a lot of shovel-ready sites across the country, and those are really geared to multifamily and to industrial. There will be opportunities in the office over time, but those will be the areas where I would say it's the most likely you will see major flows.
And the sites you have, are they green light to keep going ahead, or are you looking at?
Most recent project that we greenlit was a 400-unit building at downtown Montreal. So that's phase 2 of what we call Le Livermore. So this summer we made the decision to proceed with that second phase. We have a couple that are in the ground right now that'll be completed relatively shortly. So one coming out of the ground in Mississauga as well as downtown Ottawa, and then we have more sites across the country. We're always trying to sequence having some shovel ready and then some through the entitlement process.
And that land, is that through partnership? Have you acquired that land? How's that look?
Yeah, so in terms of our business, we've got GWL Realty Advisors. There's a parent company balance sheet money. That's one category or bucket of capital. Then we have a very large open and segregated funds, which has all kinds of institutional investors in it, and it's got some real scale to it. And then in addition to that, we have a handful of separately managed accounts on behalf of third-party clients.
So you're leveraging their ownership, their assets to feed that pipeline?
Yeah, and or depending on the appetite for those clients, we're always trying to add future.
Yeah, and how's that going?
Yeah, if your portfolio has enough scale, there's often some embedded opportunity that sits within it, and so it's really like, how do you harvest that? Now, having said that, we've been active buying sites or covered land plays in places like Vancouver and other locations. So, downtown Calgary, we have a couple of great sites we acquired specifically for multifamily in mind, and at the time you weren't sure the market was there, and it's pointed in the right direction now. So.
When you're sitting around the room, and I know this is theory, but there's a piece of land for sale right now, and you're sitting in the room with the other, potential buyers that would be pension funds, often REITs, perhaps private equity guys. You've got an advantage because you seem, at least, and tell me I'm wrong on this, but this is the way we kind of hear it at times. And for the record, GWL Realty is a great client of First Nationals. We participated in lots of the Livermore projects and hope to do so in the future. So there's some familiarity here. But the way I kind of feel, and I have no ground for believing this, or there's nowhere have I been told this, and I want you to validate it. You have a longer horizon to look at some of these IRRs than others, right? Because you're matching against liabilities on the life insurance side that allows you that luxury of saying, hey, I'm matching against 10, 15, 20 years versus some of the other players are really looking at more
mandatory,
earlier terminal cap rates and things like that. Is that true?
I think it's fair to say that most of the capital that we work with is very long-term in nature, or a healthy proportion of their investment portfolio is long-term in nature. They may have segments of it that are shorter-term and trying to, torque out some extra return. But I think that that's a fair comment, that we're long-term and we're really focused on generating cash flow and cash flows that we think we can grow over time.
Because you talked about disposition, but how often are you selling an asset?
In any given year, we're always buying, we're always selling. So yeah, we've been active on the disposition side. Over the course of the last 24 months, we've sold a handful of assets.
Any direction in there on geography mix shifts, or what was the driving decisions behind the sales?
Hey, look, sometimes you have an asset class that's well thought of, and we might look at the ingredients and say, hey, this is a great location. Are the physical attributes exactly what we want? If we were looking today, would we buy it? I think a lot of organizations years ago, as their allocation to real estate increased, they were trying to fill that bucket, and then you kind of have this scale and you have this garden of a lot of properties, and then over time you start kind of pruning and harvesting and trying to maybe curate your garden a little bit better.
So maybe a better question is, what's the average tenureship of those assets you've sold? How long have you owned those assets on average? Like, they're all pretty long-standing assets that have kind of gone through their useful life under your portfolio, and now it's just time to let go.
Yeah, that'd be a fair comment. Yeah.
So as we all try to survive to 25, What defensive positions are you taking? What are you doing to manage risk that we've got in the market right now?
Yeah, I mean, we're always talking to our leasing teams about what's the right strategy and approach in terms of positioning our product and positioning our assets. In many respects, I look at how are we being defensive, or maybe is really a little bit of offense. In that, I look at our organization and say, what have we been doing over all of these years, and what could we be doing? So if I think about our organization, where are we at? Where should we be? I would call that the performance gap, and that's where your leaders, like every organization, everyone's always trying to twist a few dials to be the best that they can be. But then, where could we be? And so I kind of look at it and try to spend time thinking about where could we be and leveraging what we have. If you're national, you've got a boots on the ground type of operation. You're very well sponsored. You've developed capabilities over the years. How can you leverage that? And so from our vantage point right now, we're really focused on expanding the menu of investment vehicle offerings that we have. And that's an exciting area for us to be. It would be net new, and we view, the idea of developing closed-end funds, which we haven't in the past, being complementary to our offering. And so those are the types of places we're spending energy right now and really trying to position ourselves for the future. So I know you talked about how we defend against risk. I would say the bulk of our portfolio already is performing pretty well. If I look at how we've performed against the MSCI index over the last 12 months, over the last 36 months, performance has been very strong relative to that index. Now, I appreciate the index hasn't been blowing the doors off, but outperforming that, I think, is a reasonable place to be.
Never really been a terribly risk-heavy organization in the first place, right? So this is not a big shift for you guys to take a more measured approach. Or continue, I guess. You're really not changing anything, probably.
Yeah, I'd say we're just trying to expand what we can do.
What's the biggest worry for you? What keeps you up at night, if you put it that way?
Classic sales question.
Yeah.
Yeah, for me, I really believe at our organization, it's people. People are the heart of our business. And if you think about every single person that we all know, they all have their own story. They have things going on within their work environment and outside of it. And I would say it's about the people. That's what would keep me up at night. There's all kinds of things in the market that you can't control, but what I care most about is our people, and that would be where my worries lie.
Yeah, because you've done your job properly and structured your portfolio the way you have. All those various variables that occur in the environment, you've insulated yourself.
You prepare for them before they arrive.
Yeah.
Not maybe that's why I said defensive is the wrong word. That implies you're scrambling to fix a problem. But the portfolio like that, you'd be prepared for a little stormy weather.
We're almost out of time, but maybe the best last question is the opposite. What are you excited for? What does 2024, 2025, assuming you survive there and beyond, look like for you guys? What are you working towards?
For our organization, we've recently gone through a fair amount of succession planning. So, we've kind of got a new group of people that are sort of at the senior table right now. So, there's some rejuvenation there, which I think is exciting, and I think that the market is setting up for some people to take advantage of it, and we want to position ourselves to do that. And from my vantage point, again, where could we be as an organization? And I think there's a lot of opportunities out there, and I'm excited about what we could look like 5 years from now. So keep the head down, keep working hard, and keep remembering, the sun's going to shine tomorrow. It will, have a good mindset, be kind to people, work hard, be positive, attract good talent, look after the people that you work with, and make sure that everyone's bought in to the goal and the ambition, and good things will happen.
As we head into the next 22-year cycle, hopefully. Hopefully. We are at a time, I think, right?
Yeah. Unfortunately. So Glenn, thank you for coming on. I really appreciate you taking the time to do this. Thanks to First National for powering the podcast. Thanks to the Forum for hosting us here at the Toronto Real Estate Forum. And of course, thanks to Dow Vukovic, ML Emporio, and Turner Townsend for sponsoring the speaker video series. And thanks again, Glenn. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it, guys.